certificate of attendance. Please submit any questions you have in the chat box and we will answer these at the end of the session. Without further delay, I'm excited to hand over to Damian, who's going to tell us about getting ready to teach speaking and receptive skills online. Thank you, Damian. Over to you.
Thanks, Charlie, and greetings, everyone. I see we've got a lovely mix of people from all over the world in the chat box. So, hello, and you're all very welcome. So today, I'm going to be talking about teaching skills online, particularly speaking and receptive skills. Obviously, by receptive skills, I mean listening and reading. And I'm going to talk about how we can not just practice, but actually develop and improve those skills with our students online using Roadmap. I'm one of the authors of Roadmap, the new general adult course from Pearson. I've written, along with my co-author, I've written the A2, A2 plus and C1 levels. Can I just quickly ask you, put a yes or a no in the chat box. Has anyone used Roadmap yet? Oh, lots of no's there. Okay, well, hopefully this will be something new for you, and hopefully you'll be keen to use it after I've talked about it. So let me talk a little bit, very briefly first, about the background to this course and where it all came from. So a few years back, it was kind of end of 2016, beginning of 2017, Pearson conducted some research. Basically, the aim of this research was to find out what students around the world need, and no mean feat, really. Oh, hi, Elizabeth. I see there you're using Roadmap as well. Well done. nice to hear. Okay, so the findings of this research, I mean, there was a lot of information that came back, but there were some key points that really stood out. And these were as such. The most important thing that we heard time and time again was that speaking is valued above all else. All students want to be able to speak confidently, fluently, and effectively in English. However, we also found out research from teachers, and I'm sure this will ring a few bells here as well, that getting students to speak can be difficult. Not always difficult. Some students are better at speaking than others, but it can be difficult. And there was a variety of reasons for this. Firstly, it could be things like students weren't interested in the topic, or students didn't have much to say about the topic. They didn't know much about it. Or perhaps students were just tired when they came to class. Some students are too shy as well. Thank you, Christine. Okay, so speaking is valued above all else. However, that's not to say that other areas of language aren't important. Grammar, vocabulary, other skills are also important. And finally, that different classes have different needs. And this depends on probably their reason for learning English. Perhaps they're learning for work, perhaps they need to pass an exam, or perhaps they don't really know why they're studying it. They just want to be good at it in the future. So this is how we started when we were planning out Roadmap. We thought, right, speaking is going to be the most important part of it. However, we do also need to deal with other things as well. It needs to be a flexible course, so that as a teacher, you can find something in it that suits the needs of all of your classes. So how do we look at speaking? Let's look at speaking first. Now, I'd really like to get you to do a speaking activity, but unfortunately unfortunately we can't, just because there are so many of you. So it would take way too long. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to do the little speaking activity, and then I'm going to explain what's involved with it. So this speaking activity is called My Lockdown Project. Now, as you all know, it's been, what a year it's been. We've spent half of it locked down, staying at home and looking for things to do a lot of the time. Now, one thing about me is I love growing things. I always have, but especially so in recent years when I moved into a place with a garden. And I love growing food, I love growing flowers, I love growing vegetables, all that kind of thing. So usually around March, April is the time when I start sowing seeds, I start planting plants, that kind of thing. However, during lockdown 1.0, a lot of people decided that they needed to panic buy food. And not only that, but panic buy seeds and grow their own food. So it was really difficult to get seeds this year. I had a few left over from last year, mainly just tomatoes. So I started thinking, right, I need to be creative. How else can we grow things? And I read a really interesting article one night, the end of March, about growing things from food scraps, leftover food from when you're cooking. So that prompted me to do this. Can you guess what this is? Answers in the chat box. Cabbage, eggs with cucumber. Right, no, this is what's left over. Oh, someone had it there. Celery. It's celery. It's what's left over from celery. So this was bought from a supermarket. Basically, you chop the bottom off, put it in water. Now, after doing a bit more reading and research, I discovered that you shouldn't really put it on the bottom of the bowl because the roots need to grow through. So I did this. So as you can see, it's just touching the surface of the water, and look at this. Some little bits are starting to grow again. I bet you never thought you'd get a gardening lesson today, did you? So after a while, it grew a bit more. Now the weather was getting a bit warmer. This was kind of end of April, beginning of May. I planted it out in a pot with some soil. And as you can see, it started to grow little baby celery bits. How cute. And over the months, it grew more. And then finally in the summer, it grew to this. It's huge. And I had lots of delicious celery. So there's a little tip for you. Okay, so this is the activity that I've done with my students before. So I start by demonstrating, telling about my lockdown project. And what I get them to do is to think of something new they did during lockdown. And I'll give them 3 questions, very simple. What was it? Why did you do it? And how did it go? So, well, we know what it was. I grew celery from the bottom of a plant. I did it because I couldn't find seeds anywhere because everyone had bought them. And I think it went rather well, to be honest. Okay, so this is a speaking activity that I've used with students online. They can make notes while they're on their own. They can turn off their video while they're doing this, and you can just kind of let them get on with it. They can ask you questions, any vocabulary they need, either in the chat box or through the video and audio. And it's worked quite well. It's also like this idea of something good coming out of a terrible year, you know, because if it hadn't been for lockdown and COVID-19, I wouldn't have learned how to do this. So, what are the ingredients of a successful speaking activity. So the way I see it, there are 5 main ingredients for a successful speaking activity. First, you need a clear communicative goal. Now, by a goal, I mean something real life and tangible that you want them to achieve. So in this case, it was describe something you did through lockdown. For your goal to be truly communicative, you need to imagine someone interrupting students halfway through they do it and say, what are you doing? It shouldn't be, oh, we're practicing the present perfect, or we're practicing past simple, something like that. It should be something in real life. So in this case, it would be describing something during lockdown. The second ingredient of a successful speaking activity is preparation time. Now, I often think that for every 1 minute they have to prepare, it leads to several more minutes in the speaking activity. And it also means that they can really think about what they're going to say, whether it's asking them to make notes or asking them to just silently think about their ideas. It also means they go into the activity kind of armed with ideas. Not a very nice analogy, sorry. And that therefore means that they're going to be more confident when they go into the speaking activity because they know they've got something to say. They also need the right tools for the task. So they need to have the grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation work, information, useful phrases. They need to have all this so that they can actually do it in English. And then this idea of personalisation. I think the best speaking activities are on personalised topics. Now that could be talking about an experience, or it could be personalisation in terms of being able to give their own opinions on a subject. And finally, I think a useful ingredient of a speaking activity is a chance to reflect. So to reflect both on what they've done, how successful they did, and also a chance to reflect on the language they used. And then from this, think about what they can do in the future to work on this. So how does Roadmap do this? Well, I'm just going to share my screen. Oh, sorry. Okay. Can everybody see this, the Pearson presentation tool website? Yes, good. Okay, so when you get the Roadmap book, you get a code on the inside, and this code, if you go to the Pearson English Portal website, gives you online versions of the book. So let me show you one of the lessons. I'll just randomly, definitely didn't plan exactly the one to show you. Okay, 3C, let's do this one, this sounds good. I like 3, let's see. Okay, so this is a typical core lesson from Roadmap, and I'll talk a bit more about the core and extended lessons afterwards. So thinking back to our ingredients of a successful speaking activity, the first one is a clear goal. So at the start of each lesson, we have a clear goal here, and this one is describe past experiences. Now, all of the goals come from the GSE, the Global Scale of English. This is based on the Common European Framework, but it's much more detailed and a lot more practical as well. So let's say this is the toolkit, which is free to use. So let's let's have a look. So you can use this when planning. So let's say adult learners, then it's skill, let's say A2 plus, which is where we are, and show results. Okay, so this gives you all of these kind of communicative goals: can make and accept offers, can discuss what to do, where to go, make arrangements to meet, and you can refine it by keyword. So let's see if it works. Past experiences, show results. Okay, maybe it doesn't. Okay, but so basically all of these communicative goals come from the GSE, and then we've kind of simplified slightly the goal to put on the actual book, and then you can see the grammar and vocabulary as well. So this is our goal, and every lesson in the core lessons ends with this final speaking task where they have a chance to achieve this goal. And the final speaking task as well, as we said, we need preparation time. So it's been to prepare and speak. Now, sometimes the prepare also involves the students listening to someone doing the task and doing it as well. Sometimes that's here, sometimes there's a listening which demonstrates the task as well. So it might not appear there if that in that case. So here what they're going to do, let me just go here, is they are going to play a game called Truth or Lie. So they listen to it, how does it work? They listen again for a bit more detail so they get the rules and stuff. Now this was a way for them to practice talking about past experiences. They have to come up with some sentences, some true, some false, and then they describe them to a partner in breakout rooms, and they have to guess which is true, which is false. So this is the actual prepare bit. Let's wait for that to load. So they have to make notes about 2 experiences they've had and 2 they haven't had. And there's some examples here to help them, or they can think of their own ideas. Then they go into breakout rooms and they play the game. We give them a few useful phrases here as well. So on the presentation tool here, you've also got some widgets. So you've got a timer that you can set for different times. You've got a scoreboard where you can add teams. If you're playing a game, you can give them points and stuff. And there's also a dictionary tool there as well where you can look up words. Okay, so back to our successful ingredients for a successful speaking activity. So we've mentioned clear goal, preparation time, and next was the right tools for the task. So when we were writing these core lessons, we would start with our goal and start with the speaking activity in order to achieve that goal. And then the rest of the lesson was kind of planned and written backwards, if you see what I mean. So we wanted to include grammar and vocabulary in each lesson. And our driving force was always what's the best grammar or vocabulary to help them achieve this goal. So here we decided on present perfect with ever and never. And then vocabulary was lots of different activities, and we've got some collocations here. Okay, then students have a listening or reading input where they get some information that can help them with the final goal. After the grammar, they do some pronunciation work. Now, the pronunciation in Roadmap is, again, it's always linked to the grammar point. We don't just randomly throw in some sounds for them to practice or something. It's always what's most relevant to that grammar point and therefore helpful for the final goal. So here we're looking at the pronunciation of has, hasn't, and have, haven't. Okay, then they do some practice of the grammar. Again, more personalisation here. Throughout the course, you'll see, for example, if they're doing a gap fill, it won't just be random sentences. It'll be sentences that they fill the gaps, and then as a follow-up, they can discuss which of these sentences are true for you, that kind of thing. So we're constantly trying to personalise everything here, which is kind of the next point as well, personalisation. Here they're talking about experiences. Again, it's personalised. And then we also give them some useful phrases, so a bit of kind of functional language for to help them with the task as well. Now, finally, the final ingredient that we mentioned there was reflection. Now, this comes in two forms. Firstly, there'll be something like here where they reflect on the activity. So who told an interesting true story? Who told an interesting lie? In the teacher's book as well, at the end of each lesson, there are some more language-related reflection questions. So there'll be things like, what were the 3 most useful words or phrases you learned this lesson? How can you use them again in the future? So it'll be things like that. Good. Okay, so the other thing to say as well is that in each book, in the core part of the book, for each unit there are 4 lessons, an A, B, and C, which are that format, and a D lesson, which we called English in Action, which focuses on functional language. So in this unit, it is give and respond to news, and so they have the final speaking activity at the end. Right, okay, let me go back to this. So, that's speaking. What about other skills? And I'm going to be focusing on listening and reading. So, let's think about how we teach receptive skills, listening and reading. So, a typical receptive skills lesson might look like this. We have a lead-in where we introduce the topic and establish the context. Then we might pre-teach some vocabulary that students will hear or read if it's necessary for them to understand the text. After that, we usually start with a gist task where they listen or read quickly just for overall meaning. Then we give them a more detailed task. It might be comprehension questions, it might be true or false sentences, something like that. And then we usually round up with a follow-up speaking or writing task, which allows them to reflect on the information that they've listened to or read. And it also gives them a chance to use any vocabulary they might have picked up as well. So this is from one of the listening lessons in Roadmap. This is the extended, the other part of the book. So as you can see, I was going to ask you, what do you think the topic of it is? But I've told you there. So as you can see, it's the text that they're going to listen to is a short talk about greetings around the world. Different way people greet. And the learning outcome, or our goal, is students will understand a short talk about greetings around the world. Okay, if this is a typical receptive skills lesson, very good for practicing listening, for example. Here's what John Field has to say about this type of listening lesson. I'll give you a moment to read it. I'll take a sip of coffee. Okay, so basically what he's saying is learners get feedback, whether it's correct or not, but then the listening ends there usually. And while they're practicing listening, they're not really being taught how to listen. So the listening isn't being developed. And that's something that we wanted to do with Roadmap, with listening, reading and writing. So going back to our lesson, so we started with as with the speaking lessons, we start with the goal, the learning outcome. Students will understand a short talk about greetings around the world. Now, what we also wanted to do is, this is kind of like the main skill, listening, as it were. We also wanted to teach how to improve a sub-skill of listening. We wanted to give them a kind of a strategy that they could then use when they listen outside the classroom. And in this way, we're actually kind of developing and teaching their listening. So with this lesson, the learning outcome, students will be better able to understand the main idea of a talk by using key words. And this is the sub-skill that we want to teach. And in order to improve this sub-skill, we want to teach a transferable strategy. And the one that matches this sub-skill quite well is listening for stressed words. So this is... Okay, so basically what I would do when I'm teaching in a class is I would show this sentence, but unfortunately I've forgotten, I don't have animations here because I created this nicely. So I would first just show them the key words. People, world, greet differently. So if you just see this sentence, people, world, greet differently, can you get a general understanding of what the sentence means? Yeah, you can. However, if you take away the keywords and you just say around the, each other, the opposite is true. You can't really have a general understanding because they're the grammatical words, as it were. Now, there are different types of sentence stress in different languages. So one type, and the most common type of languages around the world, is called syllable timed. And that means that equal or more than equal, almost equal stress is given to all the words. So if you say a sentence, you, me, him, her, and then you add and, you and me and him and her, it gets longer. But in English, that doesn't happen. Machine gun language like that. In English, that doesn't happen because English is stress timed, which means that the amount of time it takes to say something depends not on how many syllables there are, but how many stressed syllables there are. So with that sentence, you'd say you, me, him, her, and then it would be you and me and him and her. So the other words kind of get crushed up, and that's why we have phrases like rock and roll, fish and chips rather than rock and roll. So what has this got to do with listening? Well, it means because the important content words are stressed, that's all students really need to listen for. So they don't need to worry that they can't hear the other squashed up weak forms. They just need to listen for content words. And that allows them to understand the key points of, in this case, a short talk. So in our Develop Your Listening lesson, we start, as normal, we start with the lead-in, looking at the photos, and we're pre-teaching a bit of vocabulary here. Pardon me, sorry. So things like hug, bow, kiss, shake hands, that kind of thing. And then They have a bit of a discussion, guessing where they're from. Then we have our gist listening. Then what we do here is we have a focus box. And this gives students information how to improve that skill, strategies and language to listen for. So here, understanding the main idea is our sub-skill. It isn't always necessary to understand every word when you listen. You can use keywords, verbs, adverbs, nouns, adjectives to understand the main idea. It's easier to hear keywords when listening because they are usually stressed. And then you can kind of do that activity that I said, raising awareness. So after we've kind of taught this strategy, we give students some practice. So this is kind of similar to controlled practice in a grammar lesson, I guess. So here, they listen to this one sentence and they underline the key words. Or actually, sorry, they do it first, then they listen and check, and you can check answers with them. Then, after they've done that kind of controlled practice of the strategy, we get them to have a go at doing it. And this would be almost like your freer practice in a grammar lesson. So they listen to the last part of the talk, and they complete these notes with one key word from the box here. And then they have a final couple of questions to discuss in pairs. So this is our approach in Roadmap to developing receptive skills. Like normal, we have our lead-in, our gist task. Then we have focus on the sub-skill, strategy in the box and some controlled practice of it. Then we have a detailed task, focusing on the sub-skill or comprehension questions so that they can use this strategy, they can practice it to complete the rest of the text. And then finally, as normal, we have a follow-up task. So it's just these bits that are different. And if you think about it, it's a bit like a grammar or a vocabulary lesson where you start with a lead-in, have some input, then you clarify the meaning of the vocabulary or the grammar. Then you do some controlled practice, you do some freer practice, and then, well, we've got a follow-up task here. So, if you remember right back at the beginning, I spoke about how we wanted to build as much flexibility into Roadmap as possible, because we know that everyone has different classes with different needs. So how do we do that? Okay, the first thing you notice about Roadmap is that it's kind of split in two, and we have what's called a dual track approach. So we have the core lessons at the front, and this is kind of what you'd expect or what you normally see in a course book. Which practices listening, reading, writing throughout. So each lesson's built on a GCSE speaking learning outcome, or LO, as we tend to use. Grammar and vocabulary helps students succeed in the final task, so give them the tools for the task. There is some reading, listening, writing practice, but it's incidental. Because at the back of the book, we have the develop your lessons. Now there's 3 for each unit, and they link to the ABC lessons in the core, which develop listening, reading, and writing. So you can see here, develop your reading, develop your writing, develop your listening. And they all take this approach of teaching transferable strategies that they can use. They're linked to the core lesson by topic. They're usually kind of a different slant on the topic, or an extension of it, something like that. These can be done in class or at home. So if you've got a student who says, I need some more kind of listening practice, where can I do it? You say, well, do today's develop your listening. And what you can do with this course is you can do, if you've got a short course, how many tracks are there to develop listening? There's 1 per unit, and there's 10 units. So what you could do, if you've got a short course, maybe a summer course or something, you could just do the core lessons. If you've got a longer course, you could do everything, develop everything. Or you can just pick what's needed for your class. In that sense, it's flexible. You're unlikely to be having the same approach with each class. The other thing to quickly mention as well about topics is within each unit, as I said, there are 4 lessons. Something else that came up in the research that we wanted to kind of focus on as well is this idea of topic fatigue. So you spend like a whole series of lessons or a whole unit talking about transport or something, and by the end of it, students don't want to talk about cars or trains or buses anymore. So what we've tried to do is there are kind of vague links by topic within each unit, but they're quite different between lesson to lesson. So they're going to be doing different things each lesson. It also means that you don't have to follow the course from start to finish. You can pick out different units and lessons. It won't be dependent on each other. Okay, so when it comes to online, there's a lot of extra online components. I'll show you some of them, but there are many more. So components for students, we've got what you typically expect to see, students' book, workbook. There's also an interactive ebook, where they can pull out different exercises, type things in, that kind of stuff. There's online practice, which is My English Lab, and that's kind of a version of the workbook. And there's also an app which gives them extra practice, so they can sit on the bus or whatever and do it. For teachers, we've got the teacher's resource book. So there's teaching notes, photocopyable worksheets, and also gives you access to that teacher's portal that I showed you. On the portal, there's loads of stuff. There's teaching notes in PDFs, the presentation tool, online and offline, but if you're teaching online, that probably won't make much of a difference. Media resources, so there's videos, or you can download all the listenings and everything. Photocopyable worksheets are there. There's a mediation pack, which maps different parts of roadmap to mediation criteria. There's an assessment package and a test generator. There's teacher access to My English Lab and lots more. On the Pearson website, I think it's english.com/roadmap, you'll find lots more stuff. There's a guide to teaching online, and there's another guide to teaching roadmap online. There's how to teach online with a roadmap webinar series. There's teaching with roadmap video series. And then, of course, there's all these other wonderful webinars that you've seen this week and last week as well. And they're all linked from the website. And coming soon is Zoom integration to the portal. So you can schedule classes, you can go directly from there into Zoom and everything. And yeah. And that's it for me. So I believe we're going to question time.
Interesting session, and as you can see from the engagement, people loved it also, so thank you. We have had a couple of questions come in.
Charlie, sorry.
Oh, really? Okay, well, Richard might have to step in if this isn't going to work, but I'm reading the 3 questions from the chat box in the bottom. So the first one we've had in was, could I use Roadmap B2, for example, for business English? Can Roadmap be adapted to a business English course?
It is primarily a general English course. There are bits that will be relevant to business. I mean, if you're looking at kind of specific business vocabularies, there will be of that. But I do generally think a lot of business English is quite similar anyway, especially for in-service students. There's lots of things that they do that are same as general English, like socialising, ordering a restaurant, that kind of thing. But it's not. I mean, you might be able to use some of it, yeah, but it is a general English course primarily.
Fair enough. Well, my response to that would be check out our business partner, which is our business English course. So please check out the our catalogue. I'm just copying in the link in the box now, and I've pinned it to the top of the chat box. Okay, so the next question: how many tracks within the course are there to develop listening skills?
So there's as mentioned before, there's one per unit. So there'd be 10 overall. But there's also lots of extra practice with the app and online, the student portal and stuff as well.
Great. Okay. We've had somebody here asking, is it like CEFR? I think they're referring to the GSE scale. And it is similar to the CFR. It complements the CFR with a more granular breakdown.
Yeah, I think that a lot of issues people have with the CFR before is that some of the goals were a bit broad. So this kind of, it builds on that and makes them more specific and practical. And there's kind of lots more goals in it as well.
Great. Another question here. Does the core course include enough material to prepare students for, actually they're saying the exam. Can you answer that? Or I suppose we need to know what exam it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot in the develop your sections that is really useful to exam students, because of a lot of the strategies and things are the specific types of things that are assessed in things like the Cambridge suite of exams, IELTS, that kind of thing. And some of the tasks mirror, but it would need supplementing, I think, in terms of exam skills, if you see what I mean.
Absolutely, okay. I've got so many things popping up in front of me, excuse me. Looking at class sizes here, how can we determine the materials that are suitable for each class if, for example, there are 28 students in the class? So perhaps the question should be, is this material suitable for large classes? And if so, could you maybe suggest a way of using it?
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of because there are so many online resources for students and for teachers as well, but for students, it's particularly good, I think, for large classes, because students can. So there are two tools. There's one for students and one for teachers. One for teachers is for you for teaching in class, and the one for students then access any time whenever they want. There's also the app where they can do extra practice of things like at their own rate, whatever they want to do. So you can kind of follow the core lessons with the whole class during class time, and then you can point out to students the different things that are available so they can choose what they want to work on and practice, if you see what I mean. So that way it's kind of like so much stuff available with it that I think every student can find something that's useful for them and that they need.
Yeah. And we've got people there saying that it's also great for one-on-one lessons, so it's a very flexible course. Time for one more. I think somebody's asked about whether you can use Roadmap for listening skills. So could you answer that? Can we use Roadmap for developing listening skills? And perhaps can you draw on some examples from the book? Are there parts of the book that you can that are dedicated specifically to listening?
Yeah, I think I got you kind of going out a bit on the sound, Charlie, but I think I got that. It's can we use it for developing listening skills?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. an example here. There was the example we saw in the lesson, in the talk, sorry. So here again, we've got to develop your listening. They've got the goal and the focus, introduce. Another example, let's have a look at another example from another unit. Back to units. Let's look at this one. Develop your listening. So again, here, understand the discussion, and the focus is understanding, agreeing and disagreeing phrases. So again, introduce it, do the focus, bit of control practice, then more detailed focus task, follow up. And as I said as well, there's also there's lots of extra practice online that students can do as well, and they've got the app as well where they can practice language and stuff. My English Lab, there's extra listening. There's the videos as well, which are really good for helping listening. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Damian. So that is all we have time for. Thank you, Damian, for putting together the slides and for presenting.
Yeah, thank you. I'm always keen to talk about robots. And thanks everyone for coming. I'm honoured.
Absolutely. Yes, so thank you all of you attendees for joining us today. A quick note, certificates will be sent out. Recordings will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. And look out in the follow-up email for the link to your digital goodie bag, your virtual goodie bag. Thanks for joining us today, and see you at another Pearson English webinar soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.